Everybody, welcome back to the Beyond the Peloton podcast. I'm Spencer Martin from the Beyond the Peloton newsletter. I'm here with my co-host, Andrew Vontz from the Choose the Hard Way podcast, co-founder of the BetterLab.io. Andrew, do you want to plug anything before we get going?
Yeah, for sure. Please come check out the Better Lab. We have mindful science-backed practices to sleep better so you can feel good for the things you care about the most, like riding your bike. You can find the Better Lab app in the Apple App Store and at thebetterlab.io. Check it out.
We've got a variety of topics here. The Giro d'Italia is going on. I guess that's the number one priority item, but I don't think we could fill an entire episode talking about the racing at the Giro d'Italia over the past few weeks because there's been such dominance from Tadej Pogačar. And then we also have Unbound Gravel coming up this weekend. But most importantly, what we're going to lead with is Scott McGill, our friend, our sometimes co-host on this podcast, getting fourth place at the Road National Championships last weekend in Charleston, West Virginia. And it was a seriously impressive ride, and B, I was impressed by the level of those guys. I mean, those first three, it was like three in a group: Sean Quinn, Brandon McNulty, Nielsen Pallas. Like U.S. racing, we've come a long ways from like a chiropractor from Phoenix, Arizona, showing up and roasting everybody a few years in a row. Like, are we becoming a real cycling country, Andrew? What's going on here?
I mean, I think Scott McGill is on the rise. Put this man in the World Tour stat.
I mean, it was a really impressive ride. For those of you who didn't dedicate a Sunday afternoon to watching this, I would even say pseudo televised event, because for half of the course, the most interesting half of the course, it would just cut out because they didn't have cell reception.
They didn't have a VHS camcorder on the backside of the course. Yeah.
And I saw some people not from the US very confused as to how a major American city cannot have cell reception. And let me be the one to tell you, Charleston, West Virginia is not a major American city. It was just a town that was willing to host the event, and we're glad they did. But McGill got in the break early. I mean, it's actually really, like our friend Jonathan Kaplan was saying, oh, you should break this down in your newsletter. But it's actually, national championships are almost a crummy race to break down because they're so simple tactically, where you really just get up the road because there might be a peloton, there might be 120 people at the start, but it's just going to fall apart quickly. So McGill was in the early move. And then McNulty, Pallas, and Quinn, they're so strong that they were just able to bridge up from the peloton. The move falls apart. McGill's the only one that survives. But if McGill would have waited, he probably couldn't. If he could have bridged with them, it would have taken so much out of him that I still think it was the right decision to go as early as he did. And he held on there until that last lap. I was thinking, God, if he can get over these climbs, he's going to win. He's going to win the sprint. And I still think he would have won the sprint because, outside of being faster, I think he's just tactically better than those guys. And I mean, they're very good. They also look like they were very tired and cooked. Nielsen Pallas kept launching attacks that weren't on the other side of the road and were like right next to McNulty, and McNulty would follow him. And I still, my big question, Andrew, is why didn't Brandon McNulty attack them? Because he was alone after McGill was dropped. He was alone with two EF riders, and he was just letting them attack him. He went to the line. He does almost win the sprint, but that's a tough position to be in. I mean, do you have any notes on that? I think he probably should have attacked on the climb if he could have.
Now, this is some foreshadowing, Spencer, because I know a lot of people are here today to hear me talk about my big ride at the Haywood 55 gravel race in Northfield.
Stick around to the end. You
Minnesota.
buried the most important thing at the end.
Yeah, I don't know what McNulty's schedule was leading up to Nats. I should actually look at that. It looked like an extremely hot day. It was a very challenging parcours. And I mean, they just looked extremely fatigued by the end of the race. So I'm wondering if heat was the X factor in this event. If you are not heat adapted, maybe Brandon, because he's been racing in the World Tour, didn't have time to put his Tyvek painter's suit on and sit on a trainer to get ready, or maybe he's been on a volcano. But if you are not heat adapted, you're not going to have a good day out there. You're going to really be going deeper than normal, deeper than you've ever been.
It did look hot. And Scott mentioned on the show a few days out, he said it was not that warm in Maryland leading up to the event where he was, and he was worried about the heat. And I understood what he meant when I saw it, because it's not like it was 100 degrees, but for this time of year, it looked really tough. I'm actually looking up. McNulty was in Phoenix, Arizona before.
All right. Maybe potentially heat adapted. Well, I mean, he's from Phoenix, so maybe he was.
Phoenix.
Yeah.
This brings me to my next question. So the event, I think Sean Quinn, I should say. Sean Quinn, great winner, worthy winner, kind of the perfect winner of this event, except for Scott McGill, obviously would have been the preferred winner for us.
Yeah.
But Sean Quinn checks all the boxes because this means a lot to him. He's very talented. Like, I think far more talented than people realize. Like when he was 20, I believe when he was 21, he podiumed on a stage at the Dauphiné, which is really, really, really tough to do. And that's a really young age to be racing in the World Tour. But he can sprint, he can climb. Like he just got the KOM on Strava. And for anyone, or the Strava KOM on Flagstaff in Boulder, which is probably the most sought after KOM in Boulder, took it from, or tied Levi Leipheimer, beat Phil Gaiman. But if you think about it, like Levi and Phil are climbers, and he got it during an interval session where he was doing multiple sets of Flagstaff and then did the entire super flag climb at the end, almost getting the KOM doing that too against guys like Tom Danielson. So clearly super talented at climbing, but also a good sprinter, like just an all around good racer. So really, and then hopefully this helps his career a little bit because like he's at a point where he's just even struggling to get race starts at major events on that team. So, this will give him like a bit of a profile rise. It means a lot to him. He's really strong. But we got this odd dynamic here where since it's during the Giro and during the meat of the European season, like we know Scott is popping back and forth between Europe on the weekly, basically. Most guys don't want to do that. Brandon, Nielsen, and Sean are all, I wouldn't say on the outs, but they're not currently part of their teams, I guess, like a racing squad for various reasons. Like I don't even see Brandon McNulty. He doesn't even have a start penciled in on his pro cycling stats page, which is probably why he was able to go to Phoenix and train all spring for this event. But is this timing a little weird to you, just to like slot it in during the Giro in the middle of the season?
Seems a bit peculiar to me. Yeah, I would say it's a bit on the strange side. The timing, the geographic location of this event, they all seem designed to make it as difficult as possible for the top American road cyclists in the world to attend the event and compete. So yeah, like as you mentioned, Nielsen coming back from one of these increasingly common knee injuries, Scott McGill pulling up from Maryland and recovering from a series of coach flights back and forth to locations like Rhodes, traveling with up to 3 foot-long sandwiches in his bag.
Wawa hoagies, yeah. How else are you supposed to do it?
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't think that we're necessarily getting the best riders in their absolute top form. Not to take anything away from these performances. They were remarkable. McNulty seemed to have a strong start to the season. I mean, he had a couple of
he was flying early in the season.
Yeah.
He's in a tough spot, if we want to. I mean, because he had a great season, and then now it's just like, sorry, bud, you're not on the tour start list. You're not on the Vuelta start list. Like that's a tough place to be.
But this is, I mean, we've seen this happen to a lot of riders where they get a couple of wins, something happens, maybe tweaked his knee. Like, we don't necessarily know the whole story. You're on the bench. The team moves on without you. Rafael Maica is riding like RoboCop at the front at the Giro every day. And then, like I'm looking at some of the other names on the list here, like Alexei Vermeulen. I don't know if you followed this storyline, Spencer. Apparently he has, I think his brother's getting married the weekend of Unbound, the new center of gravity in all of professional cycling. So Alexei had to skip Unbound this year. He just released some content that he was training to try to get the Olympic slot in the time trial, the most technical cycling discipline. That didn't quite work out. Nonetheless, he comes in 144 down in the men's pro road race. He's one of these riders, went to the World Tour. It wasn't for him. He's back in gravel. Now he's got a toe over here in road race and time trial world. Something that's really jumping out at me, looking at the results list, is Colby Simmons at 7th, brother of Quinn Simmons, 20 years old, Visma Lisa Bike, U23 team. I think we're about to see some big results from this kid.
I feel like I was like, man, how is this kid still on the U23 team? He must be in his 30s because I've been hearing about him for years, and he's only 20 years old. He must have been semi-pro when he was 14. And the other guy is Gavin Hodley. He finished one spot above Colby, but minutes and minutes and minutes ahead. He was the only rider. Only 6 riders finished, within 5 minutes of Sean Quinn. 21 years old on Avelo. Really,
I was going to ask, how do we say this name? I've been wondering. I don't know, but
I've been getting beat up by these kids for years. I still don't know how to say the name.
Let's talk about that for a second. So we'll call it Avolo. They had announced their official partnership with EF Education, Easy Post. They're now going to be more or less the U23 farm team. Spencer, you having flashbacks to Team 5280, Garmin Chipotle? Right? Are we going to see Votters in a camper van with these kids in Kansas City? Like, what's going on?
I have a lot of questions about this. I don't fully understand it. I don't think we're going to see Votters, making rice cakes at Redlands. And you know how he was funding that team? He got his real estate license. I believe he told me this. I'm hoping I'm getting the story right. So he got his real estate license and he cut a deal. 5280 gave them no cash for that team, but what he got was free advertising in the magazine for his real estate company. And then he would sell a house like whenever they needed money to go to a race. So he was just like selling. It was actually a really good idea because if 5280 can't give you cash to run the team, it's like, well, what can they give us? Oh, they can give us space in the magazine and we'll fund the team through some asymmetrical way. I thought that was a super clever idea. I don't think that's going to happen again. I think this is Cannondale coming in and saying, we have a World Tour team. We have a baller U23 team. And the kids have a hard, who was on that team? Scott McGill, along with Taylor Stites. A lot of these guys, they're really good on that team. And then they don't have anywhere to go once they leave the team. And so this must be Cannondale thinking, and I don't know. I wish maybe we should get someone from EF on here to talk about it. Clearly, as we saw at the Giro today, they have plenty of talented young riders, but I'm surprised they don't lean more into Tyler Stites is good. Tyler Stites leaves this team, has no landing spot. You could pay the guy, I'm sure you could pay him 70,000 euros a year to come race for you. And okay, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. It's just a low risk commitment. I'm surprised they don't try to pick up more of these guys as it is. Maybe this is Cannondale saying, we want you to take some of these guys if we're going to continue to sponsor your World Tour team. I have a lot of questions about it, Andrew. Not a lot of hard info, but I hope it means that you see more of them. It's instead of signing a former Giro d'Italia winner for a ton of money and then not actually racing them, have them race that much or win that much, you'd think that money could be better invested in trying to hoover up some of these young talents that are leaving a Volo and not going anywhere.
Yeah, you bring Francisco Manchebo on board.
Yeah. Not who I had in mind, but yes, that would be a good example of someone you don't want to sign. But
that's for all the rock racing fans out there,
What a great American team. What a time that was. We should do a documentary, audio series on that.
Oh, I've got some video footage from the rock racing team camp the year that Floyd got popped because Floyd showed up at the mansion in Malibu that Michael Ball had rented. I rode in a Suburban with Mike Creed, I think from a training ride up to the mansion. It was quite an interesting time. Yeah.
That was an interesting time.
Yeah.
And jeans ruled the world back then for some reason.
Yeah. Embroidered. Yeah. I feel like embroidered pockets are about to make a big comeback.
It's a status symbol. But before we get into the Giro, one last note. And as far as the location, I guess you race it wherever is going to let you. I'm sure they paid USA Cycling some money. And most importantly, probably provided the police to shut the streets down and let them shut the streets down. And so I guess you have to have the race wherever is going to let you do that. But yeah, Charleston, not the most centrally located place. It felt like, Scott did say there was a decent crowd on the climb you could not see on TV, but it didn't seem like it was oozing with cycling culture. But one thing you could, if you're a real cynic, you'd say, did they hold it in this middle of nowhere place so they could manipulate the Olympic team the way they wanted? Because, we could do an entire show on this, but there was this strange rule that I still don't fully understand, that if you won the individual time trial, you got an automatic berth to the Olympic road race team. I mean, you might say, I'm a little confused. Aren't those two different disciplines? Yes, they are. Why are you doing that? Someone I talked to that talked to someone high up at USA Cycling said it was they're upset. They use this line. It's like, we're in the business of maximizing odds of winning Olympic medals. But then it seems like they kind of try to reinvent the wheel too much. It's like, maybe just say, okay, we have 2 slots. Who are the 2 most points accruing riders throughout the year? Let's just go with those people. They must be pretty good at that. But I think they were hoping that Chloe Dygert or Kristen Faulkner showed up. This is on the women's side. One, just like Brandon McNulty did. He showed up. He won the time trial. Boom. He can race both. Problem solved. Now him and Matteo and a person to be named later are going on the men's side. On the women's side, they only have 2 slots for the road race and the time trial. So I guess they were hoping that Chloe or Faulkner would win the TT so that they would be, automatically slotted in for the road race. They would select whoever wasn't slotted in there. If it was one of Chloe or Kristen that won, they just pick the other one. Boom, your road race team is made. Now they have a big problem because Taylor Knibb, a triathlete, showed up and won the time trial. And now I hear that she's not going to go in the road race. But you can't just select someone. As I understand the rules, you cannot just select someone to race the road race. They have to be competing in another cycling event at the Olympics. So they're going to have to go to the track team and pick someone there. But it's hilarious that it happened because it's like a triathlete showing up and just embarrassing professional cyclists, which will never cease to be funny. But I don't quite understand why the rule exists. I feel like this is a problem of USA Cycling's own making.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of the USA Cycling specialty. And, Spencer, I just was curious, for somebody from your neck of the woods, like Boulder, Denver, Front Range area, it's a pretty common area for people who are elite cyclists live. I was just curious, how difficult might it be to get to this location in West Virginia? I'm just going off Google Flights here, but it's flying you into Cincinnati and then you're driving. It looks like that's what it's suggesting is the closest location. And I think that would be quite a drive.
You probably could fly like Denver, Charlotte, Charleston, if you want to take 2. But if you want to do one flight, it's probably like Pittsburgh, then you're driving Pittsburgh or Cincinnati. It's not easy. I don't fully understand why Taylor's doing this. And if you live in Boulder, if you ride in Boulder, you've noticed this trend. These triathletes are becoming scary fast, like really fast. Like for the last few years, I've just been like, are they faster than pro cyclists in these time trials? Because they're cruising on these things. And this is a sore subject. I shouldn't even be talking about it. We maybe are being shut down by Podbean as we discuss this. But this kind of proves that they might be faster in a straight line by themselves, because you see some of these people absolutely flying around Boulder, going up these canyons or on group rides. I don't fully understand this, because she's going the Olympics in triathlon, and then now she's just going to be like, maybe she's just up like, hey, I want to maximize my chances of winning medals. So if the triathlon doesn't go well, I pop into the time trial and maybe I win a gold in that.
Yeah, potentially. Part of what's interesting about this too is there are vastly different regulations governing position on the bike in triathlon versus UCI legal TT bikes. I mean, it creates a pretty significant problem for manufacturers. In fact, triathletes tend to favor in a very, very steep seat angle, a seat angle so steep it's forbidden in World Tour racing. So I would imagine that to actually show up and do a USAC pro level race, you're operating, I would think, under UCI rules. Therefore, you're not going to be able to use your typical TT position from a triathlon. And if I'm wrong, I'm sure you're going to get like 300 emails about this, Spencer.
No, I'm pretty sure you're right. Because you look at some of these triathlon bikes, they don't even look like bikes.
They're spaceships.
Yeah, they look ridiculous. But I'm pretty sure she had to show up and just race on, I think she's on like a Trek bike maybe, and just absolutely ripped it. I guess it's great marketing for Trek. Maybe it was a push from Trek. Like, hey, we have an athlete. Let's do a 2-for-1. Why don't you do 2 sports at the Olympics instead of 1? We get twice the exposure. And I don't know. I kind of like it. That it is this archaic thing. You can just show up. It's like Billy Mills, like was a nobody, qualifies in the 10,000 and then wins the Olympic gold medal. And everyone's like, who the hell is Billy Mills? So I like that that's still possible. I don't fully understand why USA Cycling did this themselves. I know they have had legal challenges in every, I believe it's like the last 4 or 5 Olympic Games where they've done discretionary picks. So maybe they just were like, hey, let's just have this be simple. I think they could have made it more simple, but they didn't ask me. Hey everybody, it's Spencer. I just want to take a moment to talk about a new partner to the show and newsletter that I'm really excited about, and that's Tour Tracker. You can find them at the website, thetourtracker.com. But what's really good is their app. If you get that Tour Tracker app, there's a lot in there that will help you follow the races incredibly closely, which is important for me because I'm in the US at the moment. So when I don't wake up at 4 a.m. to watch the start of the stage. So I kind of jump in around 6 a.m. And the Tour Tracker app will have exactly what's going on whenever you pop in. And it also has a time machine, so you can go back in time and see what you missed. It also has super detailed previews of each stage, including interactive profiles and maps, gradients, and detailed gradients of every climb, a live race coverage, including GPS tracking on the maps and profiles, so you can tell where each rider is, what group they're in. A lot of times these groups are breaking up and you're like, what the heck's going on? Who is where? Well, the GPS tracking on the live race coverage will solve a lot of that confusion for you, and you can see where everyone is on the road, what group they're in, how far apart each group is. It's incredibly helpful. They also have a fantasy cycling game built in, so you can play fantasy cycling against everyone in the app. It's really fun to do. I highly recommend it. And this is hugely important, a complete set of non-spoiler race notifications before, during, and after each day. I know a lot of people have jobs and they can't just sit around and follow cycling as it happens, especially here in North America during the workday. So being able to go into the app and know that the race isn't going to be spoiled for you, and then follow along as though you're watching live as you watch the replay is incredibly, incredibly important. But the thing I like the most about this is it has a great map feature. You just click that map tab and it gives you a detailed map of every stage. And to me, it's really important because a lot of times you're watching these races, you look at the profile, it doesn't do a great job of telling you, where is this going on? What part of the world are we in? Where are we going to and from? And if you're at the race, it lets you see where the group is at all times. So if you're, especially at a circuit course or one of these mountain stages where they crisscross around the same area, and you can catch a lot of the race live if you have this map feature that tells you exactly where the peloton is and where it will be in the future. So check out Tour Tracker. I've been loving it. If you can't wake up for the start of every stage and you can't just sit there and closely watch for 4 or 5 hours every day, this is going to be a key piece of how you watch races from now on. I think that wraps up nationals. I'm not.
I actually think we have to talk about one more thing, because we're actually going to see this is probably one of the most surprising parallels that you've ever heard on this podcast, because we're about to analogize between the Professional Criterium National Championships and stage 17 of the Giro. Are you following me?
I'm not following you, but I'm glad you wait. Before you say that, before we do this, this is a crazy thought. So the Kenyan Olympic marathon, or I think it's like marathon or 10,000, some event, they're doing their Olympic qualification at La Prefontaine Classic in the United States. You're like, well, that's wild. Should the U.S. National Championships just be like the 5th stage of Paris-Nice, like the top American in that qualifies? I got pushback on this idea of saying, well, it's not about the World Tour riders. This is like an event to celebrate American cyclists. But I don't know. I think there's something to make Paris-Roubaix the Olympic qualifier, and then whoever does best goes to the Olympics.
Yeah, I think if you want to celebrate it somewhere people can see the event. That would be my...
Well, yeah.
That would be my feedback. Okay, so I misspoke. Let's analogize between the USA Pro Crit National Championship, where we saw Project Echelon ride with a Legion-esque level of dominance, taking the national championship, and stage 16 of the Giro, where we saw, we're going to talk about
Star just dominate.
No, I'm talking about weather, and we were going back and forth with legend Scott McGill a bit about this. He played a big role in the Project Echelon team taking that W. And if you did happen to catch that race on Friday night, which I did, and I know a lot of listeners were on Flow Sports watching the stream, it looked like It could have been a whitewater rafting event. There was a lot of water out there on the course, right?
Yeah, I was having flashbacks. If you've raced crits in the Midwest, I'm convinced they do them. Let's hold them at the time of day when we know that it's absolutely going to dump rain, like inches of rain. Let's do the race then. It's just like,
yeah.
I mean, they obviously can't control the rain. Like the Giro couldn't control the rain, but at least they did the race when it was light out. Like that would be my one critique of the USA Crit Champs. Like maybe we don't do this after dark.
Yeah. The other thing with the USA Crit Champs, there was the corner where the wreck eventually happened. I think Sam Boardman, he definitely went down. I don't remember if he was the first or second rider in the Project Echelon lead out train. It was on a section of the course. I was watching it and I was positive. I was like, there's absolutely going to be a wreck in this corner because it was one of those corners. It had like a manhole cover in the apex of the turn and then like pedestrian crosswalk with the giant wide bars of road paint, which if you've tried to corner in the rain, that's something you don't want to hit. In fact, going back to stage 16 of the Giro, once the stage actually started and Alaphilippe had his Thomas Voeckler-esque breakaway going there for a while, did you watch what he was doing when he was descending?
I did not, or I don't know what you're going to say.
Okay. Well, basically he was holding his position like in a deep lean to hit the apex of a turn. There are painted lines on those descents. So as he would come into the small spot on the road where the painted center line was, he would go upright and then lean back over. Because if you hit one of those things at speed, you're not going to have a good day. And so I can't even imagine what it's like. This is one of the many reasons I'm not and never could have been a professional bike racer. Because that's just like, you're going to wreck. It's just the margin of friction is tiny there.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Magnus Sheffield in the stage, 14-time trial, like flying into a downhill corner with a lot of paint on it in the dry. The moment he hit the crosswalk, he's down. There's just not a lot of friction on there. And you think like Alaphilippe, he's like so slow. He's going upright. Didn't lose any time on that descent. I mean, that was a true veteran's descent there. We should also, so that stage, let's talk about today's stage. Let's just give, we don't know how to say his name. Georg Steinhauser, 20-year-old German, Jan Ullrich's nephew, apparently, from EF, wins the mountain stage. Tadej Pogačar second. A lot of what happened today also applies to yesterday if you just sub out. So DSM worked all day today for reasons unknown, which helped Pogačar because his team was getting dropped. He had teammates getting dropped on the first climb, right at the start. Yeah. Doesn't matter because DSM's going to come set pace for you, Tadej. Don't worry about it. But stage 16, supposed to go over the Stelvio. Well, maybe an avalanche is going to happen. Okay, let's go up the Umbral Pass, which if you don't know the Umbral Pass, basically you climb the Stelvio, and then right before you get to the top, you take a left instead of taking a right to keep going up, and you've dropped down into Switzerland. It's like a big roundabout. You're in the same valley, so you're like going to the same place for the Stelvio descent. So it's like a slight rerouting. Well, okay, it's snowing up there. It's like below zero. And the Giro is like, yeah, we got to go, guys, because Livigno, the town we're starting in, paid us 400 G's to do this. So you're getting on those bikes and you're riding in the snow in like -2-degree weather. And the riders were like, that doesn't sound that awesome. And so there was a bit of a standoff. I'm sure it was super stressful for especially the staff. Can you imagine that? Then one of the proposed ideas was, you're going to do the Umbral Pass, and then at the top is a 3-minute neutralization, and you have to change your clothes into dry clothes in 3 minutes, and then you go.
Sounds like a triathlon.
I know, but this is what's crazy. I feel like I was taking crazy pills. This is what happened. I think it was 2014. That's how Nairo won, because they got to the top of the Stelvio, and they were like, oh, it's so cold. Okay, everyone can have one tea and change their clothes and then go. And it's honor system. And Nairo was like, yeah, I'm out of here, buddy. And he took off and won the Giro because he didn't stop for his tea break. I mean, it's like, well, aren't you just setting yourself up for another disaster? I was shocked they were not prepared to not do this. Like, they just could have said, hey guys, roll out of town. We're going to collect our check. We'll pick you up 5K out. Get on the team bus. We're driving to this. It's this beautiful valley. It's low though. It's almost sea level. So it's a lot warmer. It's maybe 45, 50 degrees when it's -2 on the top of a mountain. And it's like takes some hours, but they start the stage. It's kind of a unique stage because it's maybe 40, 50 miles of net downhill in a valley, and then just like one long climb. It's like one long climb with that descent you mentioned, but that's a short descent, and then it climbs up again. So it's like first half is flat to downhill, second half is all uphill. They got it done in 2 hours and 49 minutes, and it was like nonstop action. I thought that was a great stage. Like, they accidentally got to the right place for what that stage needed to be. But so for those who didn't watch, Movistar works all day, holds Alaphilippe, who's in the break. They catch him like a young 20. But then Movistar starts attacking their own team that's working on the front. Then they fall off the front. Then they attack again. It pulls out this young Giulio Pellizzari. He's 20-year-old Italian on Bardiani, by the way. Impressive ride from them. He stays away. Tadej mows him down, wins the stage. Like, looked easy, like destroying people. And I think people thought he was doing 300 watts on the final climb. He averaged 470 watts for the final climb, at 65 kilos. That's cruising, folks. Just absolutely destroys everybody. And if you didn't watch on Sunday, destroyed people too. You can just copy paste that for every mountain stage, basically. But wins his 5th stage. Pretty cool celebration, counting out those wins. Andrew, this might be a crazy thought. Are we looking at potentially the best rider of all time if he keeps this up? I don't think I've ever seen anyone win stages this easy while going for the GC. I mean, and he's not just winning, he's like destroying people's souls.
Yeah, that's definitely true. We do have to consider we don't have Roglic in this race and we don't have Jonas, right? So if we have peak Jonas and we have upright Roglic, what happens?
Well, yeah, I guess that was supposed to be the tour.
Right. This kind of goes back to the point of eternal return we have, which is what happens when you have all the best bike racers in the race that they're best at.
Well, I would say, though, with the Primoz note, I've thought about this too. Think about 2020. Tadej was not nearly as good as he is now. Primoz was better, and Tadej beat him, straight up at that tour. And that was after Tadej got caught in the crosswinds and lost time early in the race. So he might just be better than Primoz. I think Jonas is the only rider that is close to him.
Yeah, we're past peak Primoz, I would say. I say he's still got a puncher's chance. We'll see what happens later this year. But yeah, to see Pog take that victory, he did look a bit winded at the end of the race yesterday when he did.
I would imagine, yeah.
Well, I mean, a lot of the times he looks like, fingers and nose at the end of these stages. Yesterday, he looked pretty exhausted. And I have to say, he really cut a striking figure with the neck gaiter on with his short sleeve jersey. That was quite a look. It's like a turtleneck. It's dignified.
It was a no. He had long pants on, short sleeves. Like, that's going to get you kicked out of the Scratch Cafe for sure. It actually makes a lot of sense, though, because you'd want to keep your legs warm and you should lose heat through your arms because they don't need to be as warm. But yeah, I'm surprised he didn't get booted out of the country actually for doing that. But I guess like with Jonas is very good, potentially even a better Grand Tour rider than Tadej. But when you factor in the one-day success, like I don't think Eddie Merckx was this good, I guess, or better. But I've never seen anyone be able to do this. Like, hey, you know what? I'm going to win Flanders. Maybe I'll win Liège too. Then I'm just going to go. He's training. Like, he was training today on stage 17.
Right.
I have it pulled up today. So the last climb, these are on roadcode.cc. You can just go on there and watch like people's power during the stage. It's super interesting. Check it out. Final 3K of the climb, he's at 420 watts, like just chilling. He didn't even look like he was going that hard, but like that's what he would do. And that, what he would be doing right now if he wasn't racing the Giro, he'd be in some mountain location doing that amount of power for sustained periods on climbs. Like, he's just using the Giro to train, and he's going to win by the largest margin in like 70 years. It's unbelievable.
Wild that we're getting live power numbers from him, and these are not estimates. Are these coming off a power meter?
Yeah, off his power meter. They're a little delayed, so you couldn't. I think they do it. It's like a climb delayed, so that you can't be in a team car and be like. I've never fully understood this theory though. Lance Armstrong would tell me I'm crazy. Like, he thinks everything should be secret. But I'm not sure why. Like, okay, so we're looking at Tadej's power numbers. He's at 300 watts. Do you know what would be he would just be dropped like that.
Yeah.
You can't hide the power. Like, you would just be dropped. And then I don't know. Like, should they go harder if you're dropped? Then maybe they should have been going harder before you're dropped because they're not just racing against you. Or like, don't share your training numbers. Well, it's like, well, why? Like, if you're training hard, is someone gonna be like, oh no, I should train hard too? It's like, well, maybe they should have been training hard in the first place. I don't know. Or like, if you showed me your power file and you're like, yeah, I have a 550 FTP. What does that tell me? Like, I can't drop you. I would have figured that out pretty quickly in real life.
I feel like Geraint Thomas has addressed this in his post-race interviews as well as on what's occurring, where, I mean, his take is, hey, this guy's just a lot better than us. You know? So when someone's a lot better and you've done everything you can, including fasted 8-hour rides for months at a time, as Geraint Thomas, we believe, did, then, you're going to not win the race. And that's what we see happening here. I mean, I will say, like, is Pog the greatest of all time? Potentially. For me, the thing that would really like make it definitive is if we saw Pog win a Grand Tour stage, a Grand Tour overall, or a classic while wearing a head sweat with the tail out the back, like we see some Masters riders. I've been trying to bring it back for a while. We've been talking about doing a limited edition Choose the Hard Way by Beyond the Peloton merch drop of the head sweat with the tail. If that's something you want to see, you can hit us up on social media. But that would kind of push it over the edge for me. From a class point of view as well, I mean, Pog she's just a very likable rider. His moment with Giulio Pellizzari at the end of the stage yesterday, where Pellizzari asked for Pog's glasses, and then Pog gave him the glasses and the jersey, evocative of the Mean Joe Green Coca-Cola commercial. Right? I was actually wondering, like, has Pog seen that commercial, which was probably made 20 plus years before he was born?
20 plus years before his parents were born, maybe.
Yeah. But that was an incredible moment. How can you not like this guy? I even had the thought when I watched that, even if it turns out that Pog is cheating, which I don't think he is, and I don't really want to have a conversation about, I would still like him. He's like a nice competitor. I like how he wins.
Yes. This was a debate going off in the comment section on Beyond the Peloton about this yesterday. Yeah. It's hard to like put into an objective bucket, but he's clearly like it's not like funny to him or fun. Like, he is a competitor and he wants to win, and he gets frustrated when things don't go his way, as you would if you're on the limit trying to win. But it's like an ease about him. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. Like, let's use Alberto Contador, very good before the clenbuterol issue, like very good. Never had that ease about him. It always felt like it was a chore it was a chore for Contador and a chore for everyone around him and a chore for us to watch. It just always felt like so orchestrated in a way. And then this just feels easy. That's the only way I can put it. I realize that's an unsatisfying description, but yeah, it's kind of like Indurain. Like Indurain, we're being honest, probably was a little unnatural, shall we say. Nobody cares because he was such a nice guy, right? Like, there's a lot to be said for just being a nice person.
What was he, like 175 pounds out?
Maybe bigger, maybe
like 180. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's quite a deal. That was quite a deal that we saw there. But yeah, I mean, one thing that we have seen in this Giro is, Pog's use of his teammates has not, I mean, granted, the guy is destroying this entire field. He could be a bit more strategic in the deployment of his teammates. And I don't think we're ever going to be in a situation here like we would have been, 10, 15 years ago when nutrition wasn't dialed. They would have a rest day or they would not fuel appropriately during a stage. And then suddenly someone who's winning one of these races, they have bad legs. Typically, I mean, we saw that with Pog. I'm forgetting which year it was. Was it 2022 when he missed a few feeds and got destroyed by Roglic and Jonas? Uncharacteristic move, but like those things can happen. He hasn't had any moments like that in this Giro, but we did see on the Queen stage, just like putting his team on the front, drilling it the entire day in a way that probably wasn't necessary. Like, they could have sat in the wheels a bit more, and then he could have done what he always does, which is okay, like, we've got 5K to go on the climb. I'm going to put 3 minutes into the field now.
Well,
right?
yeah. I mean, and what's funny, you bring this up, and I mean, they have their reasons for doing it. I think it's just there's pros and cons to everything, right?
Yeah.
They've made the decision, it's working. But interesting you bring that up. So I was stage 15. He absolutely destroys everyone, wins the stage. Doesn't need to do that, by the way. Like, they could have had the team work less. They could have sent Ineos up there, because the thing is, well, I'll get into that in a second, but they didn't need to do that. It's fun. They did. He wins the stage. Do you know who the last finisher was yesterday, the day after the rest day? It's Mikkel Berg on UAE. You know who the last finisher was today? Mikkel Berg on UAE, because Berg was the pace setter on climbs in the first week, because he's absolutely roasted. Like, you saw the guy getting dropped right out of the neutral zone today.
Right.
Because he's got nothing left. So that is the downside. But then here's where it gets really interesting. Because they used them so liberally in the beginning, the gap got so big so fast, it killed all hope. So, like, what's happened today, actually, quite a few UAE guys getting dropped, and it doesn't matter, because they've opened the gap so much that everyone's fighting for crumbs, and you'll always have a teammate. It's like, you'll always have a friend here, like the Cheers song. Because, like, yesterday, Movistar pulls. It's like, oh, here's my new team. Thanks for coming, guys. Oh, now Micah just has to pull. Michael only pulled for, probably 10, 15 minutes. And then today, DSM's at the front. And then after DSM, it's Ineos, because they've opened up the gap so much. They've killed all hope. Now everyone's racing a completely disconnected race from getting first. Pogačar is a ghost. He does not exist at this Giro to anyone other than the viewers and Tadej Pogačar. Everyone else for second is first. So they'll always come forward to work. So I guess that's the flip side of the UAE argument. Like, we burned Berg, but Berg's sacrifice is worth it, because we have such a big lead, and we've killed all hope that they'll just work for us in this final week.
Yeah, Berg sacrificed on the pyre of the hog.
He looks so tired.
GC victory. Well, this has been litigated ad infinitum at this point, but we might as well weigh in. Yesterday we had Ben O'Connor, was like the most outspoken interview I saw about the stage start, moving the stage start. And he basically said, I want the organizer from RCS who's making this decision to come out here and do this for 4 hours in the snow. And then they can tell us, how they feel about making this decision and wanting us to go out and ride in this weather. Pog, on the other hand, he was highly diplomatic in his response. Almost, it was like a Tom Brady moment for Pog.
Well, and one of them is making millions of dollars. From a bank transfer from RCS.
Yeah, I realize that. I'm assuming. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you would know more of the details about this than I would. But was it like 500k euros to show, 500k to keep your mouth shut, and you get the balance of this at the end of the race?
I mean, yeah, it actually is interesting, because he probably could have just trashed them. But, I was thinking, Ben O'Connor's right. Like, we should just start there. Like, that is totally ridiculous. I don't even understand how it's a debate. It's snowing. No, we're not racing this mountain pass. And it's not, I guess I would feel differently if it was a summit finish, but it's a really high mountain in the beginning of the stage. They didn't need it. Like, the stage was still awesome. They just wanted to do it because they needed to ride out of Livigno to collect their check. And now they'll probably have to go back to Livigno next year as like a freebie, and they're going to lose a ton of money doing that. So,
and it could happen again.
Well, so I guess there's a lot here, because, okay, the Stelvio is cool. It's high. Like, and you look at it, you're like, I don't know, 8,500 feet. That's not that high. Like, that's like walk in my backyard, 8,500 feet. 8,500 feet in the Alps is like, you feel like you're on planet Hoth. It is up there. Like, doing these mountain passes, especially Livigno. Livigno is a cold place in May. It's like there's a level of risk that goes with that, and I was surprised they hadn't planned for that, and they were just like, "Sorry, you got to do this." There was a compromise there they could have done, and like, this wouldn't have happened in an ASO race. They would have been able to work this out. They would have had 3 contingency plans. So, like, Ben O'Connor's right. As he was saying that, I was like, man, I don't know. Should you be saying that? Like, what is there to gain? Like, okay, RCS doesn't like you now. Like, that's not good. There's no benefit from that. And I wonder that's what Tadej was thinking.
Yeah. On the Pog side of the house, okay. Yeah, he's been paid out. They own him in a sense. He's being diplomatic, which generally is a good thing to do. The outcome was the outcome that the riders ultimately wanted. during, I'm sure there were very heated exchanges, still got the outcome that they wanted. So, why go say something that might be damaging down the line for the relationship with RCS? On the other hand, you could say, hey, Pog is the patron. The patron should wield his influence in maybe a mightier way, given, he really has nothing to lose if his check is cleared. On the other hand, I'm sure he wants another check next year, probably. So like it's a bit complex, but I think there is that argument of, hey, in past generations, the patron of the Peloton would take control a bit more. They would advocate for the riders a bit more. And at the same time, I also believe what Pog said. And he was like, you know what? We ride, we don't ride. I think that it probably would be dangerous. I don't think the outcome would be different. I think he probably still would have won the stage. And I think had that stage run yesterday, like the full stage as spec'd, we definitely would have seen more pretty catastrophic injuries. And the outcome of the entire rest of the season could have been transformed for the delight of Livigno.
Well, even if they don't crash, people would have gotten hypothermia. Like if I did it, I'm probably fine because I am roughly resembling a bowling ball at the moment. But like these guys are so skinny that like you saw Scamoza at what was that, Flush Wallone? That wasn't even as cold as this would have been. Like in your remote, I think you're like, Stelvio, there's probably 15 hotels on the way up, and there is, but you could find yourself like a little isolated from the caravan, and they could take a while to get you down. Like, I don't know. I do think that was sketchy. I'm surprised that it didn't violate the safe racing protocols or whatever they have. And I don't even understand why it was a debate at a certain point. Like, yeah, I'm saying negative, like sub-zero, I mean Celsius. So like 30, if it's 30 degrees Fahrenheit, you probably shouldn't be racing in the mountains. I don't even know how that's a debate.
Yeah. Another thing that I thought about is I was watching multiple hours of them sitting around and having all this confusion at the start while they were bundled up in their GABA jerseys underneath the umbrellas and trying to sit in whatever cars were around. I mean, again, anybody who's listening, you've probably done a bike race. You know how precisely you're timing your nutrition the 5th, 6th, 7th time you're going to the porta potty before you start the event. Like, these are the best athletes in the world, and I'm sure they're like quite precise with all of the same elements. And they no longer had their team buses. Like, they couldn't go on the team bus to stay warm. They couldn't use the restroom on the team bus. They couldn't have warm clothes, and they're probably just eating what was available. I don't know what the RCS had at the start, corn dogs, cotton candy. Like, I don't know what was available, but that also opportunistically, I think that's once we saw the event actually start, it was full gas. I think number one, people wanted to be warm. I'm sure they were freezing at that point. Number two, I bet a lot of riders thought there's chaos and like, who knows what's going to happen on the stage. So I'm going to roll the dice and see what happens today.
Yeah, and it is tough for, like, if you've ridden that valley, it is shockingly long, and it is uphill and downhill. So if you go the other way, you'll be like, oh my God, I've been bamboozled. This was a mistake. It's fast though, the way they went. It's just a tough prospect to stay away, especially when Movistar, for reasons unknown, is holding you at a close gap. And I think this goes without saying, Tadej Pogačar is going to go on to win this race. At this point, he could have 5 Dumoulin breaks and would be fine. You say
they mentioned that, wasn't it in the same valley where Dumoulin took his famous break?
Yeah, I think it was like right where they started the race on stage 16. I think it might still be there.
I have a bronze statue of him there.
Bronze the poo. So yeah, and I mean, he could miss a couple feet. The guy could stop for like a schnitzel at a Refugio and then like get back on his bike and probably catch up and save his GC lead. I am curious to see if Danny Martinez holds on for second. I'm happy for Danny Martinez leaving Ineos, flourishing at Bora. Geraint Thomas is going to finish third for sure. It's just really a question of if Thomas or Martinez is 2 or 3. And I hate for spoilers, cover your ears, fast forward 30 seconds if you don't want to know who's going to win the Tour de France. But Tadej Pogačar is winning the Tour de France. Like, this is like, if you're a gambling person, I mean, that's a no-brainer right there. Like, there's not, people act like Remco Evenepoel is on the same plane as Tadej Pogačar, and in a GC sense, he's not even close. Like unless he hurts himself in the last few days of this, like it's over for the Tour.
Let's talk about Remco for just a second, and whether he wins the Tour or not. I think the answer is no. I'm not even going to get into that. I still think that Wout is going to win the Tour. However,
that would be awesome.
So Remco now he's vlogging on the YouTube, and Spencer, I believe you've watched the video. He's got a video series about his comeback, and he had like a recovery day that started off with him doing fasted heat training and a bunch of VO2 max intervals, like fasted, wearing extra clothing. Do you recall the portion of that video where he sets up his trainer?
I have not seen the video.
Oh, wow.
Full
Okay.
disclosure.
You got to watch it. I think that this must have been a product placement thing. It did not look like he potentially had ever set up the trainer before in his entire life. I mean, I imagine like
I would be shocked if he's ever set up a trainer. Yeah. Dad, I want to ride. Can you come over and set the trainer up?
I've seen a lot of amateur riders that have a more dialed in trainer setup than Remco. He takes it out he has a gravel driveway, actually. He puts it on the gravel, puts a cardboard box next to the bike. After he puts, takes the through axle out, puts his tarmac on the trainer, and then like sets his phone up, like propped up against a water bottle on a cardboard box. Although I will say, if you followed Alex Dowsett's YouTube channel for a while, that's actually what he used to do in his apartment. I think he lived in Andorra. And that's what he would do. He'd like have like a cardboard box. He'd be turning his head sideways to look at his phone while he did like 4-hour trainer rides. It's time to upgrade, guys.
Yeah, get the Matt Heyman setup. I mean, he figured it out after a week. I am one of these people. I mean, I'm Zwifting on a phone. Guess you get used to it. I'm also the father of a cycling prodigy, and I can promise you he does not know how to set his trainer up. I have to do it for him every time. He will be just like Remco. He will not know how to set his trainer up as a 20-something-year-old man. I can guarantee it. I think we've pretty much covered the Giro. Let's get into the real important stuff. Unbound, the big gravel race this weekend. And then first, more importantly, your trip this weekend to a gravel race in Minnesota. Is that right?
Yeah, I was at the Haywood in Northfield, Minnesota with Jeffrey Nebellini, an incredibly talented designer, the founder of Hecla Projects. And Jeffrey invited me out there to check out this event. It's a fantastic event. I believe that it's going to get quite large. There are several hundred people in my race, which was the marquee event, the 55-mile race. There were also 395-mile and I believe 110-mile events, but the 55 is, of course, probably where there was the greatest concentration of talent, as sprint distance gravel racing is what's next. It's happening right now.
I think that's a reasonable distance.
Yeah. So, the weather had been reasonable leading up to the event. Of course, here in Hope, Maine, we finally have quite warm weather today. But leading up to the event, Spencer, it was, we were like highs in the 40s for most of quote unquote spring. There was a short period of time we got above freezing, and then it was not that warm. So I show up, I checked the weather in advance of the event. Looked like it was going to be a high of 70 on the day. We get there. It's average temperature of around 84 during the event. It got up to 91. And through a series of circumstances, I did the old show up, go to reg, take care of things, not really any time to warm up. So starting a maximal effort event without a warm up when it's like 90 degrees is not something that I recommend doing to anyone. So I would not do that, especially if you're traveling and taking time and money to do it.
Yeah, I also live in a climate that's quite cold, surprisingly cold in the spring. I would have melted, I think, if I had to go race in 85 to 90 degree weather for any amount of time right now. So yeah. And then I'm sure it was windy. Did you mention that? I'm sure. Oh, positive. Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like it's axiomatic. If you show up to do one of the events, no matter where it's located in the United States or the world, it's going to be 20-mile-an-hour winds from every direction the day you do the event. Right. So it's like riding it was like getting a Brazilian blowout in the middle of Northfield, Minnesota. And, classic like farmland. I also, I didn't do enough research. So I'm thinking like, okay, it's Minnesota. It's a forested state. This is farmland. There are no trees.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Because that was when I was in college. The big sell was like, join the cycling team. You get vacations to exotic places like Minnesota.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, got to do that. And I was like, oh, we're going to be racing through like forest. How many? Yeah, no, just farmland. It's the exact same as Kansas, Missouri.
Yeah, standard farmland. And then I got the Ride with GPS Classic, which is the Ride with GPS route. Said it was like 1,800 feet of vert over 55 miles. Where I live, if I go ride 2 hours, I'm doing at least 3,000, maybe 4,000 feet of climbing. So I was like, okay, there's not going to be that much climbing. It's going to be cool. I showed up. It was very hot. There were winds in every direction. And the course ended up having, I think, 3,200 vertical feet, which, again, if you've done any bike racing, there could be like a highway overpass. It doesn't take much to make it incredibly hard and create separation. So I was in the front group of the race for about 30 minutes, and we were averaging about 23 miles an hour. And man, I tell you, when you hit like the loose, freshly graded gravel, kind of not knowing what you're rolling into at that speed and close proximity to a group of 15 to 20 people, you're going to have an exciting time. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah. And they're charging you more than for a paved race. That's the beauty of gravel. Yeah. Was it like an actual gravel race, like on gravel, or was there a lot of single track rocks?
No, this was primarily gravel. And then the final 6 miles of the event, it was one of those, anyone in Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, anywhere in the Midwest, you know what this is. So we popped out onto a road for the last 6 miles, all rollers, but somehow the rollers are all going uphill.
Yeah, you never actually are going downhill. Yeah.
Right. Into the headwind. So it's like 20 mile an hour headwind, rollers uphill. And, you're looking at your GPS track, just like thinking, man, I want this to be over. But it was an awesome event. I would highly recommend checking it out. There was an event that's coming up this weekend, the Tour de Nord, that is supposed to be phenomenal. I couldn't take 10 days away from creating the world's best app to help you develop mindful science-backed practices to sleep better. So I came back. I got a refund on my reg for that event, but that's one I want to check out in the future. I also wanted to say, I talked to this young elite racer. His name's Finn. He works at Wolftooth. I was checking out his setup after the event. He was running what is now the hot setup in gravel, which is 2.1 Vittoria Mezcal gravel tires. So it's an XC tire that I guess has a different compound for gravel racing. And he was on, I think he's a tall guy. So on 40 centimeter bars with the brifters canted, and he told me they were 36 centimeters brifter to brifter. So like super large tires at a low pressure seems to be the direction a lot of elite riders are moving. And he said it was awesome. He said when we hit the loose stuff, everyone else was fishtailing. He said he didn't even notice it. I am very curious about this style of setup now. Was just corresponding today with a couple of bike companies that are looking to step in as my primary bike sponsor. That slot is still open for anyone who's interested in talking, at least for the next 24 hours. But I think that's the direction things are moving. I'm very curious about it. And in fact, shifting to Unbound, I think that's definitely a setup we're going to be seeing, because this northern route out of Emporia, the epicenter of global gravel, looks flintier, even flintier than past editions in the Flint Hills.
Is this like two questions. Is this you sent a video of them like driving the course? Is that
the Mazda, the car that all cyclists want? Yeah.
It's borderline. You're creeping, and if that was Switzerland, that wouldn't even be a mountain bike trail. They'd be like, no, you can't go on that. You're not allowed to go on that.
Yeah.
Like, it's very flinty.
Yeah, it's extremely flinty. So yeah, I think this weekend we're going to see flats are going to play as they always do at Unbound, but I think even more so than normal, we're going to see more flats. We can talk about the start list here in a second. Final note about Minnesota. I hadn't spent time there before. Minneapolis proper, incredible network of pedestrian and bike paths. It's just like a phenomenal cycling city, and lots of urban single track in the city, which I personally love. And it's like my favorite kind of single track. So totally rideable on a gravel bike, fun with your wheels on the ground. And then you could tell the way it was constructed. You could also go out there on a longer travel bike with like a full face helmet and jib around and do giant jumps, which I don't do. I'm a wheels on the ground rider.
Yeah, me as well. Wait, is Finn the one that recognized you? You have to tell that story.
Oh, just I was talking to Finn after the race, and he said, I think I recognize your voice from somewhere. Do you do a podcast? And then I said, yes. I said, I do this podcast with Spencer Beyond the Peloton and Choose the Hard Way. And he listens to both. So Finn, thanks for listening.
Holy smokes. What was his last name?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay. There's a couple fast Finns out there.
Yeah.
But shifting to, so Minneapolis, St. Paul, first city, I feel like, I could be wrong here, but I like, to have like a really extensive bike, not lane, but like bike path, like well thought out bike path network in the city. Like they were really ahead of the curve on that. I feel like a lot of cities are still chasing them. Shout out Twin Cities. Unbound Gravel this weekend. Do they still have the mud pit? I guess that's my big question.
At Unbound?
Yeah, remember the mud pit that ate everybody last year?
Yeah, this is like we're moving in a different direction, so it's unclear to me. It sounds like we're probably not going to see mud. However, I saw a number of stream crossings and the preview video shot in the 4x4 Mazda, so it's tough to say. And
I guess we should start here. We'll just work backwards. Tadej Mohoric is showing up. Is this just... I guess nothing's a cakewalk at Unbound because anything can go wrong. Especially, it feels like if you read Larry Warbass's post about the race last year, like came in with amazing fitness, had a great race when he was riding, like was flying. I think he maybe underestimated how gnarly it is. And I was surprised in that post to hear him say he hadn't ridden on gravel for years before the event. Tadej does not strike me as a man who just sticks to the road. So I don't know if that's going to be quite an issue for him to adjust to, but you do kind of worry, like this guy's flying. Is he going to come in and just like, I flatted on Flint in the first, I had 10 flats in the first 5 miles and I lost a ton of time. I guess that would be how he loses, but you'd imagine someone who's training for the Tour de France, Olympics. He is the current gravel world champion.
Yeah. I think
quick work of this.
Possibly comfortable riding off road.
Yeah.
Based on some of his previous results. Yeah. It does seem like in gravel, most of the time, if you're getting a flat, it typically has to do with you were in a group, you don't have line of sight, and you ride into a hole. I mean, yes, Flint can just cut not Finn. Flint can cut your sidewall. That could be the end of your race. And it seemed like, Warbass, I read his journal entry about it that he published. I watched the video. I don't know if it was BMC who made it. Just seemed like it was a sponsor obligation, like that went in a real bad direction. Right? Like he finished the Giro and then they're like, you're going to do this thing in 3 days.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, because it overlaps. This year it overlaps, but last year it was the Giro finished and then he flew must have flown to Kansas City like right after the Giro to do it. Not setting up for success. It seems like Tadej is taking this pretty seriously. The problem is, I was telling you about this off mic. You look at the start list, like Adam Roberidge, good rider, Aldo Ilisek, absolute stud. I have no idea what type of fitness they're in. It's just like one of these sports where you're like, I guess they could be good if they're in shape, but I don't really know anything about their fitness right now.
Right.
And it kind of seems like, as you said last week, you're either on the volcano or you're off the volcano. Feels like you're either winning gravel races or you're not winning gravel races. Is Keegan's not going to a wedding? He's going to be here. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. Also, I just want to point out, when I was at Strava and I was a communications executive there, we worked hard to try to make Strava the record of the world's athletic activities. And in many regards it is, but something that's changed since I was there. And this has to do, I think, with going back to your point around professional athletes and their attitude towards data. It does seem like more and more pro athletes are pulling their data off of Strava, unfortunately. So I'm going and looking at Mohoric's Strava page. This guy has not uploaded since April. So I have no idea where you've been training, Mate. And I would like to know, are you in Kansas? Have you put in time? Have you done recon on the course? Did you get out there with the drone? Do you have your own film crew making content for you? Does anyone in your film crew have a dog they carry in a backpack? That's the only way you're going to win this race. But, so like, I don't know. So for me, this is, I'm going to have trouble making a prediction because I don't know is he like just coming off the volcano, taking an overnight flight to MCI where there's now, I don't know if you have been there to the new airport. There's now an incredibly long walk from the terminal to curbside. His legs, right? His legs could be
he
gone by the time it gets to the
DIA would
curb.
like to have a word about that might get you to the bathroom at one of
okay, fair enough. But I mean, at the old MCI, which to me, it was like a Burbank or Minneapolis style airport where you would pull up and just walk in and like within 100 yards, you would be at your gate, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know if you know the story behind that, but Howard Hughes, as his mind was melting when he was locked himself in a room just drinking milk, had this idea that like airports would just be like you would pull up to the gate, run onto a flight, and you like fly Denver to Buenos Aires. Everything would be a direct flight. They didn't really think through that, like, wow, there's a lot of people on airplanes. So if people are lining up to get on the airplane, there's not enough room because we have a 10-foot wide airport that's designed to get you from the plane to the car as fast as possible. So yeah, it is no longer, unfortunately. It was quite the thing. It could be the difference, but I do worry about that. And I have noticed with Strava that a lot of used to be if you're a superstar, you wouldn't have your stuff on Strava. Now it feels like everyone pulls their stuff off. What's interesting is Tadej is putting everything from the Giro on there, not his training though, which is a little frustrating. But he's been getting flagged on all. I don't know if you've seen this. Like he gets flagged every day on these sections because and then his title today was "Haters Gonna Flag," as he's out there just destroying Strava KOMs every day.
Yeah, and I mean, I remember when he won the Tour, I believe he put everything on Strava but the last stage because, of course, he didn't ride. He didn't ride with the power meter. He wanted to ride by feel that day.
Oh yeah, that got the people riled up. And then that actually on Europa stage 2, he didn't have a power meter, but I did notice he doesn't. I don't know what I would do. I probably would. So he crashed. The bike's on the ground. He gets a new bike. It doesn't have the power meter or it doesn't have the head unit on it because he didn't grab it off the ground. I'd be grabbing that head unit. Like, I need to log this. Okay. We need to know what happens on this climb. So that's the only part of this Giro that's not been logged for him. And then just one thing before we go, I wanted to highlight because you just get a lot of feedback of like, today is the day that they're going to ambush Tadej or like pace on the front. They should pace on the front, make it hard for him. Well, here's the problem. Ben Swift, due to road codes, fantastic technology, Ben Swift, Ineos rider on the front today on one of these massive Dolomite climbs, pushing 410 watts, that's probably as hard as he can go for a sustained period at altitude. Here's the problem. Ben Swift is like 5 kgs heavier than Tadej. So if he's at 410, Tadej's in the wheels at like 370. And that's like 80 watts below his threshold. So yeah, you can put your team on the front and they can ride as hard as they can go, but Tadej's back in the group. That'd be like me riding like 210 watts or something, like 220. Like I'm not going to be under pressure at that, So it can sound easier than it is, but if you actually start doing the math of how high his threshold is, how light he is, and how hard your teammates would have to ride to even stress him, you would just have no teammates left within minutes. You would burn through your entire team, and then you're isolated against the guy that's stronger than you. So the options start to become few and far between, perhaps even non-existent at a certain point.
Spencer, we can't close this episode without making some Unbound predictions, though. So do you have the start list in front of you right now?
I do have it.
You've had it up all week. You've had this tab pinned.
It's like taped to the wall. Like, that's all we look at. I mean, I got to go with Mate. I think that's the obvious pick, but I have a feeling he might not win. Who do you think's going to win?
Oh, wow. Nicky Terpstra's had some good rides recently, and he's on the gravel circuit, of course. Valverde not pulling up for this. I'm disappointed. Valverde has been dominating on the UCI Gravel World Cup circuit. Peter Vakok, second last year, had a chance last year, and he does, he has some local knowledge. Course is moving in a different direction, though, so probably not him. And
that is the style of rider, though, that would win it.
Yeah.
You know, like no strong pro road rider knows what they're getting into.
Yeah.
And then maybe doesn't make the same mistake twice.
Yeah. And they made significant changes this year. They're not having the pros finishing in a 5 meter wide chute with the fun ride finishers. Yeah. Who else is jumping out at me here? I'm just like going down the list here because where is Greg Van Avermaet? Something is wrong with this list because it doesn't have. It's alphabetical by first name, which I don't like. Okay, so Greg Van Avermaet, what do you think? I think he's part of some gravel team that doesn't have any vowels in the name now. Like, can we get some vowels back, please? I'm tired of this. Bring back vowels.
My vowels back. I think this is a total trap. Like these guys that were at the height of the sport, I just think they don't have it any. Not that they don't have it anymore. They just mentally, it's just like they're not going to get fired up. Do you know how hard it is mentally to win this 200-mile race that sucks? Like I don't think it's just not worth it. If you're not totally dialed in with every ounce of your being, you're not going to do well. Same thing with like Daniel Oss. Like you're like, oh wow, he just retired last year, but like he's just been in the studio for Eurosport. Like no, he's not going to do well.
Okay, I've got a pick for you. Here is an outlier pick that I bet not many others will pick. If I'm going to go with Albin Licata, this is a rider who has won Leadville, has won Cape Epic, has like done everything in the world of long but not ultra distance endurance cycling. 44 has a bit of that Ned Overend odor about him. You know what I mean? Like maybe like a bit better with age. And no one's going to be watching him. So that guy has racecraft. I have no idea what he's been doing for the past 10 years, but I have this feeling he's still got the eye of the tiger, is probably like out there in Germany and Austria, like dominating masters marathon races, right? Probably.
Yeah.
Marathon XT.
This guy is a stud. So Steve Tilford, RIP.
Yeah.
Absolute legend. Like this guy broke Tilford's brain because he showed up to Leadville on his Toe Peak. He's on like the Toe Peak Ergon mountain bike team.
Yeah.
And they pre-rode the course. I hope this is true. I think this is true. They pre-rode the course the day before at the course record pace and then shattered the course record the next day at race day.
Yeah.
And Tilford was like, I've never seen anything like this. Like the Austrians are here to take our souls.
Cinzano has arrived.
Yeah, no, it was like that. Like, and if you've ever ridden in Austria, you're either on a negative 35% grade or 35% grade. Like there's nothing else. So I have to believe he's in shape.
Yeah. The two other riders that are definitely in the mix, potential winners, Keegan Swenson, of course. I don't know how many of your friends you've shared that you have some very passionate gravel friends, as do I. And I have huge respect for Keegan Swenson. I've had him on Choose the Hard Way. You can go check that episode out in the archives. Super nice guy, incredible career, the best of the best in the U.S. gravel and long distance off-road scene. He's 30, like he's still got it in him. The question is, in this field, can he do it? I think the answer is like, yeah, Keegan definitely could win this race, even up against Mohoric and others. He could potentially do it. So he's a rider to watch. And then Connie Looser, who came on strong at the end of last season, winning a lot of major gravel races. 35 though, we'll see.
I don't know. Is that too in gravel? I kind of wonder if age doesn't matter as much.
Yeah, maybe not. And then we've got Lawrence Tendam, who's been an animator in Unbound for a while now. Never seems to quite have it at the finish. And then he's brought he's got a whole crew from the Netherlands rocking up. Is Thomas Dekker here? Yes. Oh man, now I wish I was in Emporia this weekend.
If any guy didn't have that dog in him, it might be Thomas Dekker. You might see a little beer stop 10 miles in and think, I'd rather be in that beer tent. As I think about it, like Matthew Beers, like didn't he have a big result early this year? Like that, I kind of wonder if it's someone like that, like hanging around 5th to 10th in the last few years, and like Adam Roberidge, not, you know, like he got 8th last year, Beers got 11th. Like I tend to think that one of those guys is going to jump up and win instead of like Thomas Dekker. Or, I mean, Keegan, the thing about gravel just seems like once you start winning, you don't stop. Like it just does, the bad luck doesn't apply to you, but at some point the luck will turn on Keegan and he'll have a flat at the wrong time at this race.
Yeah, potentially. And I'm not really aware of his palmares, but Finn Gullikson, I'm assuming his dad's Mark Gullikson, the famous cross country racer, right? He's from Boulder.
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah. So Finn, I bet you got a shot here. And then so we got very strong field. We'll see what happens, but most likely Mate Mohoric, and then the rider who's going to have the most fun in Emporia is Thomas Dekker.
I don't know if it's his type of town. I'm a little worried about Dekker.
He seems to be able to find fun everywhere he goes.
That's true. That's true. It might be have to take a cab to Wichita to hit up some.
Yeah, hang out with the Koch brothers. Yeah.
I haven't met these guys, the Koch brothers. Everyone assumes he's talking about the business titans. No, it's just Jim and John. They love to do tons of cocaine. Yeah, is this a good event? I guess that's my next question. Like, is this the best? Is this the North Star for global gravel, or is that shifted at all?
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't been back since 2015. I thought it's a great event. I mean, it's beautiful in its own way, and it fits into that category of being in a treeless place with endless rollers and wind blowing at you in every direction that you ride. So yeah, I mean, it is an optimal location. I mean, it's interesting when you look at the influx of world tour riders, and as you pointed, like guys like Nicholas Roach, others. Yeah, I mean, they're training for this. They're taking it seriously. It's hard to imagine that they, like to have that fire in their belly, as you said, as they did when they were on the world tour. We're seeing all of the riders in the Lifetime Grand Prix. We've been exchanging messages about this, but like the big flex is people doing back-to-back 40-hour training weeks, which I think that's how you get Epstein-Barr. Actually, I'm not sure that that's the best.
It's so bad for you. It's so bad for you. I mean, there was this entire generation of Nordic like prodigies in cycling, which I guess we're seeing now. And I don't know what happened. They have Norwegian training now. It must have been Swedish training back then, where it was like, hey, do 40 hours a week. And if it snows, just do it on the treadmill. Like they'd just be riding on treadmills inside for 40 hours a week.
Awesome.
And man, what could go wrong? Try that at home. That's going to be the next trend. And they all just burned out, except for a few of them. Like Edvard Bosenhagen had a pretty good career, but that's so hard on your body, and it can't be good on on anything in your body, your heart, your metabolism. Am I crazy? So let's say you're training for a marathon. Are you running a marathon every day? No, you're like breaking off pieces of that marathon and working on that. And then the marathon might be the biggest training thing you do. Maybe that's changed. Maybe that's not how modern marathoners train, but just, do you need to train 40 hours a week, even if the race is long, like 9 hours long, 10 hours long? I'm not convinced that that's necessary.
I think it's likely not necessary. I did you mentioned Matthew Beers. So he's had some major results this year. He's also a past Cape Epic winner. And I caught the interview with him on Trainer Road. It's a great interview with Jonathan Lee. I did not realize that he basically had a tryout with Team UAE. He was a stagiaire.
Stagiaire,
yes. Yeah. So he was a stagiaire with UAE and was like going for, he was a pro motocross rider, then got into mountain biking, then was a stagiaire with Team UAE. And it was interesting to hear his experience, because he basically shared, like, he couldn't believe how much those guys were training, and it was a bit much for him, and he wasn't into the lifestyle, I don't think. So now he reoriented around mountain biking and gravel racing, but a very serious talent with a very high FTP that would scare you.
You kind of wonder, it's like, I didn't care for that lifestyle, so now I'm training 40 hours a week to be gravel. Maybe it's just too rigid inside the team, and you don't really control your own destiny like that.
Yeah.
Like Rafa Micah is an interesting personality. Like that guy's so good. And like Tadej said, he's been trying to give him stage wins. Like on stage 16, he's like, dude, you should win the stage. And he's like, no, like that's not part of the objective. And I can't do it because I'm not you and I'm tired. But it's just like, for him, it's all about Tadej winning pink. You know, it's not about any personal success. And that's probably not normal. Like that's what makes you a really good World Tour rider if you're not a superstar. And so it's probably not how a lot of people want to live.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Matthew Beers, he won BWR California this year, which like, other than Unbound, that's as big as it gets in gravel world. Bigger than the World Championships, probably.
Maybe. Yeah. I guess, World Championships is brand new, but
yeah,
it was a legit start list this last year. You know, like when Keegan isn't winning, you know, the start list is stacked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or that he's got an Epstein bar. We'll find out.
Yeah.
Hopefully not. I hope that doesn't happen to you, Keegan. Hope that you're the anomaly.
40 hours a week that's a lot to do consistently. We are so over. We got to go. But there was this group, and maybe we need to do a full episode on this. There's like these people now, I don't know how to describe them, but like the one day I was just riding home from work, a guy flew by me and I was like, whoa, he's going fast. And I'll see who he is on Strava. And it's like aliases on Strava, but they just log like 35 to 40 hours a week. And but they never race. I'm like, what is this subculture? Like, I need to know more about this. So I'm still investigating this.
Yeah, just go to the global, I don't know if they still have it, but you used to be able to go to the global leaderboard for distance, elevation. There are people riding like 1,000 miles a week every week, which I don't recommend that anyone does.
No. And like those type of people, you'll look up their Instagram and they're into like the vibrations rule the world type content. And you're like, I just need to get off this.
Yeah.
I've now poisoned my brain even looking at it. Well, we'll let you go back to your corporate domination of the world with the Better Lab. But thank you, Andrew. And I'm sure you'll be glued to. Are they streaming it this year, Unbound, or no?
I believe they'll be doing the thing where you need to watch it on Instagram stories. So you'll see a series of about 100 little clips and try to figure out what's going on. It's not, they did it on flow bikes one year and they weren't able to do it. It's like 9+ hours for the elite athletes, 10 hours.
It's often confusing to figure out what you're looking at. And it's in a place that doesn't have a lot of cell reception. So it cannot be easy to try to stream that.
Yeah. You would need to have, I can think of ways you could do it. You could just bring your own Starlink, have it on your Hummer that you're driving next to the event, which I think they do. But yeah, and then Lifetime now they do a recap YouTube video very shortly after the event, like typically the next day. And if you want to learn more about these Lifetime events, I've also had Kimo Seymour, who is the SVP who runs all events for Lifetime and the Lifetime Grand Prix. Pretty interesting stuff. Come check it out.
All right. Well, thank you. And we will be back to talk about how the race actually plays out next week.